So today's gameplay episode on World of Tanks console is featuring the Chieftain Mark 6. This is the tier 10 British heavy tank. There are multiple of them. There's actually 3 of them if you have a look at the tech tree. They all come from the Conqueror, so this is the tier 9. Really good tank actually, the Conqueror is. You can actually get yourselves the FV215B, the Super Conqueror and the Chieftain Mark 6 all from the standard Conqueror, so it's actually a really good one to actually pick up. The grind towards the Conqueror, however, is a little bit tedious. You're going through tanks like the Churchill 7, the Black Prince and the Carnarvon, which are all pretty mediocre heavy tanks. They're really slow comparatively to the rest of them, and the alpha of their guns means that when you're coming up against Russian TDs, they don't fare too well in game. But enough of that. We are going to get into some gameplay, and then I'll give a setup as to the Conqueror. We'll go over all of the weak spots of the tank and also all of the good things that you'll see within the tank at the end of the video. So if you want to check out the gameplay, have a look at how it plays first, and then we can move into how you can actually set up the tank if you want to purchase it yourself. Alternatively, after you've seen the gameplay, you could just have a look at some of the other World of Tanks videos that I have on the channel, and they'll be linked at the end of this video, and this video should be timestamped for you to be able to just flick around the video as per where you want to go. So without further ado, into the gameplay. So the first gameplay clip that we actually have in this Chieftain, obviously it's not available on World of Tanks PC, unfortunately for you guys that actually want to pick it up and have a go, but hopefully this video will actually show you all about what the tank is like in game. So if it ever comes to PC that isn't the T95 Chieftain or FE201 Chieftain, this one is certainly a very good alternative to that kind of tank in the game. Now, with regards to what is good about this one, well, it is definitely the turret armor and the gun of this thing. It is absolutely fantastic. You can hit on the move very easily. Unfortunately, we do get a little bit of lag within this replay, so if you see me missing shots by quite a considerable margin, that isn't usual. That's just because my aiming is actually pretty bad, and you can see at the very beginning of this map we are taking a few shells. However, they didn't actually manage to penetrate, and we've actually bounced quite a few within the start, even though it hasn't actually registered as block damage in the game. But you just saw we took multiple hits and we did not receive any damage, and that's something you can kind of rely on in the Chieftain. When people are aiming from long distances, it's kind of hard to hit the lower plate of this thing, which is 100% a weakness. Now, there are a few other weaknesses, like the cupola on the top of the turret that you can see kind of poking out here on the right hand side of the turret from this kind of view. You'll also notice that there is kind of a flatter bit on the, when you're looking directly at the turret, on the left hand side, so that's also the right hand side of this tank. It's flatter, it means you can get penned fairly easily, and yeah, it's a bit of a problem, I guess, for those of you who are wanting to have some really good games. But you can see here, one of the key advantages of the Chieftain over a lot of other heavy tanks is that APCR is standard, which means that you can actually hit a lot of these fast light tanks that are pushing up aggressively against you, and so you actually have some really good games. And if you aim properly and use the free aim well within console, then you'll definitely have some much better games than if you were to just auto aim in this thing. And yeah, it's kind of, you've got to use this accuracy right, because you know, you can actually aim properly, and when you do, trust me, this thing becomes super OP in game. It definitely is one of the better of the 3 heavy tanks, and you can have some fantastic games for sure if you make sure to put yourself in the right situation. So what sort of situations, you might be thinking, should you be putting the Chieftain in? There is quite a few that it kind of favours. Obviously getting hold down is an area that you want to be doing in the Chieftain, but just because what happens is you can get right into a position where people cannot pen the turret unless they get super lucky. It is really hard to hit that cupola and to pen the turret of this thing. I mean, sometimes people will be able to, just because they're high alpha TDs with heat, can go through the turret, and often they can hit that other bit, the flatter bit of armor that I mentioned, which is a little bit of a problem. But what you can see me doing here, you know, it's a pretty poor game. I'm thinking we're not got any real map control. We're probably going to lose this game, but hopefully maybe I could do something about it, maybe twist the tide of the battle and yeah, maybe take control of a couple areas on the map. Whether that's 100% what's going to happen, not entirely sure, but you'll have to wait out to find out what actually happens. Now there is a few positions on vineyards that are kind of the key areas of the map, and one being A6, that kind of hill area over to my right, one being this area that I'm in now where you can actually defend fairly well from here. But it does rely on your teammates in the town to not basically get removed from the game, and then you have to actually kind of defend the left hand side of this map. The one thing that can kind of be the counter to this kind of position on the map is artillery, obviously, and you'll see throughout this game we're trying to avoid artillery completely, but often that's very hard. Considering just how much RNG is in the game, and certainly when they can miss you for 1000 damage or just miss you for 600, you can't take too many of those, and so making sure that you're moving in between shots and just making it typically hard for the enemy artillery is something you want to be doing in the Chieftain. You see an artillery round just came flying over the top of our tank there. Now, does the Chieftain actually do quite well in most games? Can you brawl in it? 100%. You've got that 400 alpha damage, which actually allows you to get up close and personal. You've got the accuracy to be able to snap onto people's weak points if you fully aim, and you also just have the rate of fire. You can see that when you're actually playing this thing, you can actually get about 7-second reload if you've put on the rammer and also a few of the perks. Obviously putting on rapid loading perk, which is kind of essential if you're going to be playing on World of Tanks console, that is. Obviously, that can't be used effectively necessarily 100% of the time, but what it can do is, you can put out damage like this, super snapshotty kind of damage where you really don't have to aim too much, and you can see what happens is we can shut down that AMX 13105 in quick succession. It really doesn't take too long. We've got a 5.8 second reload on a heavy tank at tier 10. That's heavy tank, that's not a medium tank. 400 alpha, you've got a DPM of approximately like 4,000 on a heavy tank. When you actually take into consideration that is disgusting. Obviously rations and the tank and all of the boosts that you can take make this DPM higher. But what you do have to kind of rely on is just making sure you're in a position where you can constantly do damage. Now, yes, I'm saying this and we haven't particularly been doing too much damage ourselves, but it is essential for you to be able to put yourself in a position. And yes, I did play slightly badly here to not kind of take a flank early on in the game, and it kind of left us in a position where if we pushed we would have been taken out of the game, and so it's kind of, we have to just play this kind of more passively, and hence why I've not really moved too much. Sometimes you do have to do that, because often you'll see players on your team complaining that you're not moving, but it's not worth moving if it's going to mean that you're going to be taken out of the game and you're going to do like one shot of damage. You're better off just staying where you are sometimes, and I think a lot of players forget that. They get a bit too anxious, they get a bit too jittery, and they want to go in and deal some damage, but often you'll actually end up doing more damage if sometimes you play a little bit more passively. I'm not saying by doing this that you should just be camping all game, but what I am saying is, yes, learn to be aggressive when you need to, but also learn that you should probably stay back sometimes when you need to as well. So you'll see here I'm being aggressive. I've loaded a Hesh round, which is really, really nice when you can do that in the Chieftain, because obviously you get the alpha. The Hesh pen is actually really nice, and that you can actually pen quite a few tanks in the game reliably with Hesh as well. So you see I switch back there because I didn't really want to bounce another one, and considering the Conway was on low health anyway, that means that I would have been able to just take him out of the game anyway with my standard round. So that's where the ammunition kind of and your thought process should be going in games, making sure that you're switching between the best ammunition type for the engagement that you're coming into. There's a Leopard 1 ahead of us. What kind of armor model does that have? It's got fairly weak armor. Are we going to need our premium rounds? Absolutely not. Are we going to reliably pen with HE? Probably not either. So these are the things you need to think about. These are the things you need to be using to your advantage. He actually kind of he went into a position that I was genuinely not thinking he'd do there. He'd gone right back and pushed right off of us here. Now, yeah, after the rounds, you want to be thinking about consumables, making sure you got the right ones. In terms of optimizing the Chieftain, I did go with the large repair kit and the enhanced combat rations, just because the rations is actually such a good kind of feature in the game. It's definitely the thing that I think kind of impacts your game the most, considering everything. And what you'll see here, right, is that I do know that guy is probably going to be there. He did go out on my render range and he did get underspotted, but it's very unlikely in that kind of slow heavy tank there. Tank destroyer, slow heavy tank destroyer I should say, like strongly armoured. He's very unlikely to have got out of the way, so sometimes you need to fire these blind shots, and that's what we did in this game, and we managed to pick up the actual damage there. So sometimes take those shots. Remember, people, just because someone's gone undetected doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means that the spotting mechanic or whatever, and there's no one sat there spotting anymore. Now, in a position like this where it's very, very risky for you, you've got a Jaeger, you've got an E4, you've got various other tanks in the game kind of pushing you, you've got a 60 TP somewhere around. You do need to take the initiative and sometimes move before the eventuality happens, because if you're in a bad position in a tank, then it is a bad position. Now you see what I've realised here, I'm in a bit of a bad position, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hightail it out there. I've got 1280 hit points. Sometimes it's not possible because you're more than likely going to take a shot which is going to end you. The T95 has a really high alpha damage gun if he actually has the high alpha gun, which means that it's not going to be favourable for us if we actually get hit by him. But luckily we have the amount of health, so that if we do take an alpha damage hit of 700, it's not going to be the end of the world. It will just make us a one shot for the rest of the game. Now what you'll see me doing here is I actually put that rock in between me and the field, because I did see that the T95 was last spotted there, and that's kind of an area that you need to be aware of. I see the artillery round comes in, so I try and sway out of it, but he missed us for 500 or 600 nearly, which is unfortunate, and it means we are now a one shot to the E4, the 60 TP and the Jaeger, which is just so disappointing, and the T95 if he rolls kind of average, which is unlikely because the average rolls have kind of changed recently. Now we've had a decent game, let's not joke. We've had 5,600 damage, we've had 2,000 assistance, which is more than enough, but it is coming to the twilight of the game. It's looking not so fun for us here. Although we do say that, and the E4 bounces off of us. One of the platoon mate that I was in the Jaeger, who got removed in the game by artillery early on, he said honestly, like, let's hope we get lucky, and luckily we did actually get quite lucky there. The E4 didn't aim, and that's kind of one of the things that you need to be doing in a high alpha TD when you're coming up against these tanks that are a one shot. That guy wasn't on enough health to just bounce a shot and then reload. He should have been thinking about aiming at our weak points, and that's something he made the mistake of, and we punished him for it. It did, however, mean that we do get some extra damage, so I'm not going to complain too much, because we've had a good game so far. We super low rolled there, which is really unfortunate against the Jaeger. So luckily for us, the Sheridan on our team, the light tank over to my right, he actually managed to deal some damage to him, and I'm thinking this is a completely winnable situation here. We've got a 60 TP, which is a slow heavy tank that's just decided he's going to come for us. I tried to aim at the track, and unfortunately we do finally get taken out from this game, and the Sheridan gets taken out by the Conqueror GC. Typical light tank being hit by artillery at the end of the game. So yeah, really decent game there. Unfortunately, we did lose, which is kind of a little bit of a heartbreak, but it's not too much of a problem. We did pick up a lot of damage. We had the high caliber medal, which means, we had the most damage in the game, and certainly combined 8,500 damage combined is nothing to sniff at. It's just a shame we didn't win. We made 76,000 credits, which is also really good. And a really good game, and we'll move on to the next game in this video. So the final gameplay clip is in Malinovka. So this is the snow variant. There was actually an original summer variant that hasn't been in rotation for a long time. I don't know if it will ever come back, because Wargaming Console will have this thing with not actually implementing any of the maps back into the game. We've got a lot of maps out of rotation. We've only got like probably 14, 15 maps in rotation, and a lot of them are the new maps that came with the new Modern Tanks game mode in the game. So yeah, bit of a problem for me. I'm finding playing the game a little bit tedious, having these same maps that you just play over and over again, especially when a lot of them seem to be these new maps and they're not really suited to the World War II game mode. They were designed in order for True Vision, and they don't necessarily work too well, especially if you're in a heavy tank, which I am playing in the Chieftain, obviously. So, in these big maps, the Chieftain is kind of not suited, considering you can get hit by artillery very easily. The maps weren't designed for artillery, or at least they don't offer too much protection from artillery. Now, getting back into the actual gameplay now. In a position on Malinovka where you want to be taking your heavy tanks, it is certainly on the hill. You want to be making sure that you come up here. You want to use the windmill up to my left to be able to actually avoid artillery shells, because that's the one key thing about the hill, is obviously artillery really do focus you, and more so than usual. So that's kind of a negative, I guess, with regards to taking the hill. Obviously, then you have to push down into tanks, and that's where a lot of people go wrong, is actually deciding that they're going to push into the enemies from the hill. When you've got the hill, you've basically won the game, so long as you don't push, or you don't be silly and you're taking a lot of time getting spotted where artillery can hit you. If you win the hill, you win the game, in my opinion anyway. And if you take it early enough, and you support your team, and then you relocate back down your side of the hill, you can actually put yourselves in the right position. And you'll see that in this game, whereby our team have taken the hill. They've now got to fight an uphill battle, literally, in order to win against us, because we've got the high ground, and as Anakin says, or Obi-Wan says to Anakin, I have the high ground. You have to sometimes take hold of it, and realistically they're going to find it a lot more of a struggle to actually try and advance towards us. It's an uphill battle, really hard for them now, and so I'm deciding I'm not really doing too much. It's kind of up close fighting, and I don't really want to get spotted, so hence why I'm not kind of pushing up aggressively here. But what I am thinking now is, our team are kind of over in the bottom left hand corner. They're fighting against quite a few tanks on the map, so you see me looking at the map a lot, and that's kind of something you need to be doing, using your situational awareness that you will build up when you're playing on World of Tanks. And the situational awareness, when people say what is the key thing in World of Tanks to get better, it is 100% learning when to aggressively push, learning when you need to retreat, learning about reloads, all of the situational things, whereby if you see a Death Star fire their gun, obviously then you want to move back, or you want to be aggressive, I should say, and then you want to actually output damage as soon as they've done that, because obviously they're reloading. It's got a big long reload. You have to take each situation by each situation, regardless of the map. Sometimes you can't just go one way on every single map. I can't just give you one position that will mean that you win every game, because every game is individual. There is no such thing as the best position in the game. It doesn't exist. It's only the best position for each game individually. So when I come up in this matchup against these players, these are the best kind of positions, and you have to adapt to the situation that you're coming into. Now, as far as this game, where does that kind of come in? So I've seen that the bottom half of the map has basically been taken over by the enemy team. We've lost a lot of tanks down there, and I realised that the majority of their team is actually down there. And so what I'm thinking is if I push down here, I can maybe get some vision, but using the view range of the tank and also the DPM to just hold off some of the people that are going to come. Now, I'm not saying you should aggressively push towards a flank that's failing, because, you know, that doesn't work in the general term. It also means that I can get some shots on people over to my left that were the camping ones that, you know, our team were kind of finding it hard to come up against. Like you can see that TD over there, the Death Star. Obviously we can't hit him currently, but if we can, it will help out our team who kind of were on top of the hill. Now, when I said win the hill, win the game, I mean if you play it right, you know, if you're not aggressive, don't try and poke enemies that are just going to be sat there, especially if they're a Death Star. You know, they have the Hesh rounds that will just splash you to death in the end anyway, so make sure that what you are doing is just kind of using your common sense. Put yourself in a position which benefits your tank, and then they're going to have to push if they want to do something in the game. You can see this Roger Dodger has been caught out in the open, and we're just now farming him for every single last hit point of his health. Don't know if I'll get the actual final blow on him. We didn't, but that doesn't really matter to us. As long as he's out the game, one more tank we don't have to deal with. And yeah, we're in a nice position here now. You know, it's looking better anyway. We've kind of halted the advance of the southern half of the map, and we're also putting some pressure on the people on the left, which means, you know, our people on the hill are going to be able to maybe get some shots down onto them whilst they're kind of distracted by us. And it also means I can help out my teammate, like the T95, who's aggressively pushed. Probably gone a little bit too far in my personal opinion, because he is in a slow TD, and unfortunately we missed the Dragon there, which is actually really annoying, and that's my bad if he manages to actually take out our T95 there, which he doesn't. The Griller actually took out the T95, which kind of indicates to me that he's going to be probably sat in the H5, H4 area of the map. So, you know, that tends to be where the TDs go, and you kind of have to take that into account when you're kind of thinking about where you should redeploy yourself. Now, in terms of redeployment, Chieftain is not necessarily the best tank to redeploy. It is slow, 35 kilometers an hour top speed. Obviously you can put on some of the speed boost equipment, but that's kind of probably not necessarily that worth it. You want the vertical stabilizers to boost the accuracy, so you can hit on the move when you're actually moving, and you can get into position. You know, often you can actually get yourself in a position where you can fire on the move, because you are quite slow, which means the bloom of the tank isn't that big. You can see we hit the Griller there at the back. We saw he fired from that kind of area, and we managed to actually snipe him out of our render range. You know, these are the sort of kind of differences between some of the better players on the game and some of the players that kind of don't really know the mechanics. I'm not saying I'm the best player in the world, certainly nowhere near. But what I am saying is, you know, those kind of things, you know, making sure that you do fire when you see someone, even if it means you're more than likely going to miss, because a shot not fired is equally as bad as a miss. So make sure that you actually hit those shots, or at least attempt to hit the shots, because if you see them, they aren't going to move that quickly. There is no tank in the game that can move that quickly, and you know, sometimes you just have to use a bit of insight as to where the opponents are likely going to be. Where would you be in a tank at that kind of area in the map? And you can see, you know, the AMX 13105 goes undetected. Where's he going to be? Obviously in the same kind of line of path, going in a straight line. Where is that likely to be? And we managed to hit him. We also tracked him, but I kind of had to actually move because we got spotted. So yeah, these are the differences between some of the better players and some players that are less experienced, and they don't quite know kind of the things you should be doing when you're coming up against the opponents. Now, what's the actual game looking like? It's 6-9, which isn't very good in my personal opinion. You know, it's not looking too good for us. What we do spot, E75 camping in the back. What can we do to him? Well, hopefully get a few shots of damage. We did actually bounce somehow off him at the beginning, I've realised that this medium has kind of signed it at his own warrant, if you know what I mean. He's probably not going to do too well now because he's pushing into 2 tanks, and there you go, he's removed from the game. Probably got penned by artillery. GW Tiger tends to have really high pen, so yeah, I'd expect he actually got removed fairly easily. But you know, what can we do? We can't really go against the RNG in the game, and so now it's time that we actually move back, because I don't want to be the front line, or at least I don't mind being the front line so long as my teammates can support me, which at that kind of position they can't really, because the TD was far too far back. Now I realise this is an even worse situation. 5 versus 9 is not a situation that you really want to be in, and so it's time to go up the hill. Considering it's team destruction, the enemy team are going to have to deal with us on an individual basis, if that makes sense. So they are actually going to have to push if they want to win the game before the timer runs out, and that's the key thing. A lot of the people will kind of not even realise that it's not a standard battle, and that you have to actually push sometimes in order to get those last couple of bits of damage and also just maximise your game. Now we get super unlucky against the AMX 1390, our shell kind of goes way lower than where we were expecting, but it doesn't really matter because in a minute we will pick him up before he tries to actually get away because of the lead, although we do miss him again, which is actually annoying. But yeah, we find the AMX 65T out in the open, don't know what he was doing, certainly don't do that if you're on your team. We realise that E4 will definitely need some help with the WZ Quill in there. That's a really broken tier 10 heavy tank. I say broken, I say that a lot. I just mean it's one of the better ones. It's the most, probably one of the most competitive heavy tanks at tier 10. It's a premium one as well, of course. The premium one's better than the actual Tetri one in the WZ-111-5A. That's the Chinese tier 10 heavy tank. Plays a lot like an IS 3 or a T10. It's like that kind of line, you know, very much like the Object 277, very similar, and we're definitely going to need to help the E4. Don't know what kind of skill level this guy is, obviously don't know what kind of skill level the E4 is either, and so it's kind of crucial that we manage to get this guy at the game. The 1390 is actually causing us a real problem in this game. I'm not going to lie, like, he's been a real little cretin coming forward towards us. We miss him again. We're having an absolute rout here, and yeah, we're going to have to fight this Quillin, I think, and we're going to take him out. You know, the 1390 is not necessarily the biggest problem. I want to make sure that I get the Quillin out of the game. Artillery pushes us. Don't know what he's doing on the hill, but obviously he didn't realise we were going to survive that long. 1390 here is moving. You can see we're not a complete bot, but luckily the artillery actually finishes him off to make sure we didn't miss him again in this game. Now, I do have to say a real big kind of thank you to the medium tank on our team. He kind of helped us out a lot. We didn't realise that the FE215B183 was there, which is a real annoying tank to play against, that's for sure. And so, you know, I'm going to be a little more passive. I don't need to push into him. Both the artilleries are gone out of the game on the enemy team, which means, you know, I don't have to necessarily be too aggressive. But what we will do, FE215B on the move, very doubt he'll hit me. You know, we are playing a bit dangerous here. But yeah, we've got the hit points to actually take a shot, and it's not going to be the worst thing in the world if we do get hit, and I very much doubt he'd be able to hit us there. Now, I noticed the 261's been taken out of the game. What does that mean? Well, that means the Gorilla is on our right, which means he's over there. I've pinged on the map to let my teammate know. Obviously, he might already know that. I'm just letting him, or confirming that I know where he is, and that my teammate will know where he is now as well. That also means more than likely the Waffenträger Alf E100 that is still in the game is definitely probably going to be over here. Now, whether that's true or not entirely sure, but you know, we also spot the E75 that we saw at the beginning of the game. He misses us, which is good. We keep pumping damage into him. The one thing that I am a bit scared of is obviously if the Gorilla is back there, which I believe he might be, you know, he could continually do that to us, and we definitely don't want that. Now the E75 fired again, which means we can put one last shot into us, or into him. Very unlikely to get hit again. So yeah, we're just pinging once again to make sure that our teammate knows where he is. He's saying great shot, means that he probably knows. He's not necessarily a bot, if that makes sense. Right, so what kind of position are we in? We're looking actually quite favourable. You know, the medium tank down to my left is in a good position. We're going to poke the hill to try and spot. Unfortunately we didn't. The M60 down there, he's kind of waiting around. He doesn't want to push, obviously, because, you know, when you push into TDs that are going to be sat at the back, that's not always a good idea. Now, we did win the game here. Now, seems a little bit lackluster. The timer ran out, and yes, it was very, very anticlimactic. We did actually pull it out, so technically we did win the game for our team, because what happened is, you know, we took out those last remaining tanks in the game, bringing the score back, and actually me and this M60 managed to actually win the game. Don't know what would have happened. It would have probably likely ended up with us winning anyway. You know, the waffle was behind the M60, which is a bit of a kind of bad situation for him, but he might have been able to out-traverse. You never know. And certainly with my Hesh rounds in the Chieftain, which I would have loaded against him, or both of them, meant that I would have probably come out on top, and you know, we would have got some more damage. Unfortunately, the timer did run out, and this video is getting super long. But yeah, 7,000 damage, nearly 793 assistance damage, bringing the total up to roughly around 7,500, which is another good game. Hopefully, between these two games, you kind of learnt what the Chieftain's about, learnt about the tank, and we'll get into the equipment setup right now. So how do you want to set up the Chieftain? Well, in this way, you want to go with advanced loader, advanced optics, and gun stabilizer. What are the alternatives? You could go with ventilation should you want to, and you'd probably want to drop out maybe loading time, but it's up to you. I really like having the high DPM in this thing. Kind of makes it much easier to play. Technically, I'd just keep it all like this. I wouldn't make any alterations. I don't think there's any reason why you'd want to swap anything else out. This is kind of the optimal setup. You'll get a bit of assistance damage, and you won't get outspotted by enemy tanks so easily. You'll have really good accuracy, and you'll also have really good DPM. So yeah, these are the things you want to be looking at getting in your tank. Obviously consumables, enhanced repair kit, med kit, and enhanced rations. And then as far as premium ammunition, you don't really need a lot. You've got really high pen on your standard rounds, 270. So yeah, there's very little situations where you'll need to press A or X on PS4, I should say, and then you've got a few Hesh rounds to come up against tanks with lightly armour. So yeah, that is the setup. In terms of commander perks, these are the ones you want. You want Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Track Mechanic, Sixth Sense, Snapshot, Camo Expertise, Muffled Shot, and Situational Awareness. So those are the ones I went with. Obviously you can swap out a couple of them, but for me these are the ones that I found to be the best for the Chieftain Mark 6. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. If you did, remember to subscribe if you aren't already, and also like the video. There'll be plenty of other World of Tanks console videos on screen right now that you can have a look at. But that's it for today's video. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.